Midwest Marty, the one-man party.
Yay!
Welcome back, fellow modders, gamers, and innocent bystanders. This is Midwest Marty, the one-man party. Going to show you today how to set up a Conan Exiles dedicated server. So that way you can run your own server, have your buddies get on it, have all sorts of fun. For starters, the first thing you need to get up and going is a dedicated server launcher from Funcom. Newest version as of today, which is January 2nd of 2025, is the dedicated server launcher 1.7.9. So we'll be using that for the demonstration. However, I will be keeping a link with the most updated version down in the video description. So that way you'll be able to click on it and download the newest version. If you're still looking at 1.7.9 being the most recent version, this is the link for the direct download. It'll go to your downloads folder and you can launch it from there. Generally, you want to move this file over to the same drive that your game is on. For instance, mine is on the C drive, so therefore I would have to put the launcher in its own folder on the C drive, basically because my Steam files are all there and I game through Steam, so that's why that works appropriately. If it isn't on the same drive as your game directory, it doesn't work, so it won't be able to find the game files to play it. That being said, I'll keep that updated with the newest launcher as I can. I don't check it religiously, but I do it enough to the point where I should be able to keep it active for you guys. After you get that downloaded and you open it, it opens up this little screen right here. And this is your bread and butter to getting your server started. Basically, in a nutshell, this is like an interface that allows you to customize your server how you see fit. It'll allow other people to connect to your computer, up to however many people you set a password for it, etc. I'm just going to walk through the basics right now for getting it all set up. Let's start out with this right up here. It says branch and deployment. I do recommend having it set up where it automatically will update this platform as it needs to upon restarting the server. So I usually use that set instead of check for updates and all that kind of stuff. Validate files is a good thing to have checked for the very first time you start your server, because it's going to validate your game files and everything, make sure everything's up to date and you have your current version of the platform running. Next is start server. If it's not running, that's a good idea to leave that checked. Reason being is if they push out an update halfway through your server day, when everybody's on there playing and it kicks them off, at least this will get it restarted again with the updated version, instead of just leaving your server down all day to leave you, friends calling you up like, hey, what's going on my server? And, I was playing just fine and all of a sudden it kicked me out. So if you leave that start when not running, it'll recognize that it's been closed and it'll reopen it automatically. Next thing you got to do is set up your server name. Mine is Exiled from Exiles. That's the way it would show up in the list when people log on to Conan and start searching through the list of official servers. Yours will be in there. Now keep in mind, when searching for that server, they may have to check the box that says mods, because if you don't have servers with mods checked on there, that yours will not show up. So keep that in mind. Set up your server password. This is the password that people use to connect to your server. If you leave this blank, what will happen is they don't require a password to get in. They can just leave it blank and get in. Now, I recommend a password on there. Otherwise, you'll probably get some people that you don't really want on your server, and that could be bad news. Admin password, of course, this is the password you use to get administrative access when you're in game. So if you wanted to be able to launch the cheat panel, to create and destroy anything you want, to be able to change permissions on everything, you can do that. Or server settings, you could do that with an admin password. So this isn't a password that you're going to want to give out to anybody else. Mod list. This is actually, whenever you look in the workshop on Steam for mods for Conan, you'll notice at the bottom of the mod, it'll have a little number there. And of course, that's the mod number that you will use in order to get that mod supported on your server. If the mod number isn't there, guess what? It's not supported on your server, and it won't let the people use that mod, and it'll just launch the game without it. The mod number that I have here is for Pippi, and if you have not tried out Pippi, I would strongly suggest doing it when you have your own server. It allows you to create NPCs, it allows you to create your own custom quests. The world is your oyster. Go nuts. So you can actually do all sorts of stuff with Pippi that you cannot do in a normal situation having a server. Shout out to Josh Tech for making that. It is an awesome addition to the game. You got to set your region. I'm set for North America because that's where I'm at. Maximum player count, I got it set to 40. You could do up to 100 if you have enough cores to support it. However, this machine that I'm running as my server has 20, so I'm only allowing 40 players at this point. Other things to consider: tick rate. This is going to be like a refresh rate for your server. It sends and receives data back and forth for events that are happening and stuff on your server. With the tick rate, 30 is default. I would leave it at 30. If you're having troubles with events spawning and stuff like they're supposed to, you might want to decrease that number. But 30 is the standard. You shouldn't have to change it at all. You got Archon. Archon is remote connect, so it's like a remote control for your server. So if you need to be able to access your server from another machine, which probably isn't very likely, but if you did, you would have to enable that. For basic function, you don't have to have that enabled. I do have other content that'll show you how to get that up and running if you want to. Same thing with Discord. If you have a Discord webhook, you can put in your Discord name and the webhook URL down here and enable it. Basically, all I've seen that this really does is it will tell you when the server goes online or offline, or if you're sending messages, like restart messages and stuff like that, it sends them to the Discord as well. I don't find it incredibly useful, but maybe some of you guys that know more about Discord can leave something in the comments. Let me know what you think, what kind of functionality you get out of it and what you like or don't like about it. The other thing is anti-cheat, BattleEye. BattleEye and VAC, I keep these on because the official servers have that on. It's a good idea to keep people from cheating. It basically, if it senses that there's some kind of problem, it'll boot them if they're cheating, other than the mods that you have in there. So, whenever there's a will, there's a way. People will do it. So keeping BattleEye and VAC on is probably a good idea, although I see a lot of people run servers without it. The main reason I keep it on there is because when people are searching for your server, for people wanting to join, unless they check the boxes that say no VAC or no BattleEye, then your server won't show up. So for ease of searchability, I make sure I keep it on so people can find my server. Backing it up, this is actually going to be where you choose the directory to where your server backup goes. This is a good idea because if you don't have this, if something goes wrong and you lose those files on your computer, you're screwed to pooch. Everybody's stuff is gone. So it's a really good idea to keep a copy of this backed up. Nobody wants to be that guy who headed up the server and everybody lost their stuff and everybody's mad at him forever. So make sure you back it up. Mine's set up to back up to my documents and then goes to OneDrive to back up that way. So that way I never lose it. It's backed up remotely. Limiting it to 7 days isn't a bad idea, because if your server goes tits up, you're probably going to notice within 7 days. So it's good to know that you have a backup within 7 days. Otherwise, it might just if your server's been up for a year, you're gonna have like 380 some odd backup files, and that gets to be a little bit too much. Limiting it to 7 will just allow it to overwrite the previous ones in order to save some space. I don't have it set up to run scripts. I don't really need to do any command scripts with Steam or anything like that. Some people do. Choose your startup map. You get to choose between the Exile's Land or SIPTA. It's important to make sure you choose the right map for which ones you want your players to play on. So in this case, I chose Exiles because Exile server is way more common. Not everybody has the DLC, so I created the Exiles one and said good to go. Most of the content that is in SIPTA is actually in my server anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Don't need any additional line parameters. We'll go up to here. Next is the port settings. Now this, I mean, I'll be honest with you, this is the part that most people setting up the server get frustrated with. A lot of times they'll just start headbutting the monitor and say, screw it, I give up. But basically what these do is these allow the game to communicate with Steam and back. So it allows communication back and forth through your firewall and through your router. If this doesn't exist, your router doesn't realize that you actually want other people's computers to communicate with yours. So this is very, very important. The default client port is 7777. The raw UDP port default is 7778. Now I'm going to walk you through provisioning these because that's important. The source query port by default is 27015. Now I believe the source query port is just a port that it uses to control things through Steam. So if Steam needs to communicate with your server, it does it through 27015. That's what these numbers are there for. Now they have to be allocated. If they're not allocated and set up for port forwarding, then they're not going to work. So that's going to be the next important step. Now to do that, this is going to vary a little bit, you guys, depending on your router that you have. But you should be able to just open up any old folder on your file explorer. Type in this case, I have a Netgear, so it's 192.168.001.001. Now that is the IP address of my router because it is a Netgear. So when you do that, it should put you right through to your router. Now it's saying, roadblock here, put in your username and password. Now if you guys, I'd say 99% of people out there, unless you're like a network technician, you probably haven't changed this username and password. The default for Netgear is admin and just password, just all lowercase PASSWRD. Mine is a little bit different. It always comes up as bad request. Just hit F5 to refresh. And voila, you're in. We need to go advanced and we need to go to port forwarding. Now here is where under port forwarding you're going to see all of your custom ports. See? Now as you can see, just for giggles, I already have them in here. But if I didn't, I would have to hit add custom service. I would have to choose a name. I would have, in this case, I would call it the game client. I would choose either, it's actually UDP, so you probably want to just select UDP, but you can use, if you use TCP UDP, it'll just automatically detect which one it is and use it. But I already know it's UDP, so let's just go from there. Now we'll do 7777 as the port. That's what we need. That's the game client port. Now what's important is I have to tie this to the machine, to the computer that I want it to port forward to. And we want it to forward to the desktop. So here is the desktop computer right here. That's the server. Now you see whenever your router restarts, it's going to assign a number to every device in your household. It's going to start out with 168.1.1 is the router. 168.1.2 is going to be the first thing it finds. 3 is going to be the second thing it finds, so on and so forth. You get it. So it's going to find my printer. It's going to hook it up. It's going to find my computer. It's going to hook it up. It's going to find everything. Everything goes in numerical order all the way up to like 255 or some nonsense like that. So keep in mind, this computer was the 6th device that it found. So therefore it is the 6th IP address. So that's where the 6 comes from. But you have to know what yours is based on that list. Usually you can tell by the device description here, you know, not rocket science. You can figure out which one's your computer. So this would actually set up the game client port. This would be exactly how it needs to be set up. Then you just hit apply, and it would give you the spinning wheel of death for a while, and then you'd get into it. Next, you would want to set up the raw port. So you'd hit add custom service, and you'd type in raw, choose UDP, choose 7778, 7778. That's going to allocate that port. Again, I'll refer back to this. See, raw UDP is 7778. Game client port was 7777. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy, right? So you got your 2 ports set up, and again, tie this to your desktop and hit apply. So now you got those 2 ports. Next, you need your query port. This is going to be the one that Steam uses in order to communicate back and forth updates to your machine. So you hit add custom service. You hit query port, and you choose UDP again, of course. And this is going to be 27015, 27015. Now the reason there's 2 numbers here, guys, is because sometimes you need a range, like of all of the ports in between a certain range. That's why it gives you the 2 different options here for a starting port and ending port. But realistically, you just need the 1 port. Sometimes when you're setting this up with Netgear, it won't look like this at all. It'll just have where you type in the ports and then separate them by a comma. Comma, comma, port, port, port. And you keep it going. So you go like 7777, comma, 7778, comma, 27015. You know, that way you can just allocate all the ports all at once for whatever purpose it is. It's perfectly fine to do that. As long as you remember to associate it with the computer that you're working on, in this case, the desktop. So keep that in mind. Now we got all of our ports provisioned. You see them all up there, 7777, 8, and 27015 are all provisioned. When that's all hunky-dory, you log out. And when you're in here, you can see, you can hit now test port accessibility. Ta-da! Let's get a beer. It's working. So your ports check out good. If they don't check out good, it shows a red light. For example, I'm going to put this as 9, and I'll show you how that looks. Womp, womp, womp. It says, get the heck out of here. So let's put it back normal. And then that is going to check out fine. So keep in mind, though, guys, if you're going to do multiple servers, I know a lot of people that are running the Exile server and the SIPTA server in 2 separate little windows here like this, because you can actually set up one of each and run them both on the same computer at the same time. What you will have to do is you will have to provision 2 new ports, 1 new game client port and 1 new raw port. The source port will stay the same. But your SIPTA server in this case would have to be 7779, and your raw port for the SIPTA server would be 7780. Now that would allow you to run both servers simultaneously and not have them interfering with each other's ports. Now that's crucial, because if you don't do this, it will not work. So if you do set up another server, don't use the same numbers. Just use numbers greater than these so it doesn't screw it up. Web page port, don't need to change. If you're using a remote connect port, you can provision that also in the ports, so that way you can tunnel through from another machine to this machine, change your settings in your server thing, and close it. That is kind of advanced, not needed for 99.9% of the population, so I wouldn't sweat it. Doing restarts on your server is a good idea, to have it set up for automatic restart. Mine's set up to do it at 6 in the morning when like nobody is online, 6 Central that is. Minimum uptime, meaning it's got to be running for 2 hours before it would decide to just do a restart, because if it just received an update 2 hours prior. There's no point in restarting it again. It's just going to piss everybody off. So that's why I got the minimum uptime there. I have it set up to do it once a day. However, some people prefer twice. If you notice that halfway through the day, your server starts running like it's on crack cocaine, and it's all jittery and stuttery, and when you try to run, it just rubber bands back, set it up on multiple restarts, and you'll be in much better shape. I don't do zombie checks to see if the server is frozen or anything like that. It's just superfluously stupid. Don't worry about it. Your external IP, this is the IP address that people would use if they wanted to manually connect to your server. Rarely ever does this ever happen, but if they do have to do that, they can connect by just putting in this IP address in that direct connect button in Conan, put a colon after it, and then put in the port, which is 7777, and boom, they can get connected. So that is the typical way you can direct connect with the good old-fashioned external IP address. But like I said, nobody really does that anymore, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. Setting up warning messages for restart is also a very good idea, to let people have a heads up. Get your affairs in order. I'm about to kick your butt offline. So I got mine set up to do it 10 minutes before restart. This blasts them with a dialogue that shows up in red above their head. At 5 minutes it does it, and at 2 minutes it does it. If they're not off by that point, it's their own fault if they become a corpse. So that's how that works. Other than that, that pretty much wraps it up. When that's all set, you hit Save Changes, and make sure, like I said, Validate is on there, and you will see what happens. Boom! It starts. Now what's going on here is it's actually installing all the files. See how it's going 1%, 5%, 17%, 30%. It's installing all the files it needs to run your server. It only really does this when it's doing validating files. After that, it will no longer have to do that unless there's an update. So when that's ready to go, you get this little thing waiting, and then boom. Eventually you're going to get this annoying little white window pops up to let you know your server is online. That's a little Steam notification there. There we go. I thought I was going to have to sing the Jeopardy theme song. There it is. Okay, good deal. So now you can start Conan, and it is there. That is it in a nutshell, guys. Your server is up and running. Get on there. Play your little hearts out. So as far as that goes, if I know there's going to be problems setting this up, guys. Nobody's stuff is perfect. So if you have any problems getting it running, go ahead and mention it in the comments. I'll try to get back to it as soon as I can. I'm not like a real die-hard YouTuber. I'll check it like every, probably 2 to 3 days. I will get back to you and help you get it up and running for you. There's not many people that do this stuff anymore for some reason. I know there's just a lot of videos on there, but nobody responding in the comments. So that probably means that a lot of these YouTubers have moved on, or they're just playing a different game. Who knows? But long story short, if you like this video, like it. Be sure to subscribe so you can see other content that I do. I do a lot of content on using Pippi to create custom stuff for your server. So if you like that idea, it'd be a good idea to keep in touch with the videos that are coming out, so that way you can see how to make a better experience for the people on your Conan server. Thanks again, everybody. This is Midwest Marty signing off.
Thanks for watching. Who did that?